Hail, hail. Welcome to the Homeboys live Friday night show. Wee bit different tonight. I am, of course, Scott McCorry, and you can see me. Reporting live from a sun-kissed Cambridge line, the land of dreams. Nae Jabo, nae Liam. Both of them are still sleeping after attending Snake Mountain for the fucking Balboa game last night. And Joe's had his teapot out, so Marty might join us, but I'm delighted to be joined again by a next one-on-one guest of mine, a man who was mentioned as recently in the Henry Larsson book. Woohoo! Ex-professional footballer and all-round great guy, Brian McColligan. Well, Collie boy, how are you?
I'm doing absolutely fantastic, my friend, doing fantastic. I'm glad to be on, and let's have a wee chat about what's been happening in the world.
Right. So, if people have watched my one-on-one or know you in general, right? So you started off at Celtic. You've kind of moved in the leagues. You ended up playing junior football to kind of peas, and you played football at a decent level. Still involved, I'm led to believe, doing a wee bit of scouting and stuff like that. So, in fairness to say, you know your onions, right? So we'll start off with basically. See, I broke tradition in the show, Brian, because I've actually got a list. Right, which is something we don't ever have on this show. We kind of just hope for the best.
Jesus.
But we just wing it. I mean,
I'm feeling special here. And I'm feeling under pressure as well, by the way.
Well, the first thing I want to talk about, right? So the Celtic performances, it's fair to say they haven't been great for a wee while. But now the results are kind of not as great as well. And it certainly seems since the Bayern Munich game, the attention and the focus has kind of fell off a cliff, and then we ended up with the result. Hibs is one thing, things don't go for you. Huns is another thing, touch and go. You could even say it's a wee bit of luck, but then you get the performance and result against St Johnstone. Right, so did you watch the game, first off?
Yes.
Yeah, so you've seen the game, right? Give me your thoughts on the game, and then ultimately, as an ex-pro, so you would have a thought of football that we would do. I mean, no matter what level he played at, the allegations against the team they knew is they're down tools. Job's done. The Huns have stopped putting any pressure on us, so we can just turn up. There was 3 stands full of Celtic fans. So as I say, tell us your thoughts about the game, and then go for there.
I think the game, obviously, once you watch the game, see right after it, obviously you're quite emotional, and obviously it's no until you sort of settle down and you sort of reflect on it. I just thought Celtic were very passive in the game. The 2 wide boys sort of really didn't do anything to go and beat somebody, to go and try and commit people. And everything that they'd done in the midfield was very safe, very passive, and it was sort of as if they were like, right, we'll get the goal, it will come. We'll just keep doing what we're doing. There was a lack of urgency as well. You could see it sort of coming in the first half, because you could see there was too many times in the centre half they were getting on the ball and it was touch. Where if you go back to the start of the season, the centre half gets it was touch and play. It was getting popped into midfield, and it was getting popped out wide, going forward, back, and the ball was getting moved at pace. Now, I'll give him a bit of sort of leeway. The part's terrible up there, right?
And it looked the worst I've ever seen.
It looks what I've seen, and it's not conducive to a fast-flowing football, right? So I give him a wee bit here, but what I can't give him is, see, when you do get into that final third and you've got the opportunity to go at somebody, or you've got the opportunity to sort of increase the pace, they just weren't doing it. And it was as if they were sort of expecting something to happen. So, and if you look back over the past, it's about 12 weeks since the Bayern Munich game or something like that, they've always had a player in one of the games who's probably just changed it, and it's usually been Maida. They scored a goal for something. Celtic's been very lethargic in the first half, and this is a flip of the start of the season, because if you think at the start of the season, Celtic have blown teams away at the start of the game, but they've always had that one player at some point in the second half has done something and it's ignited everybody else, because what usually happens then is the other teams sort of have to react to that. So see, Celtic went and scored on Saturday in the second half, then St Johnstone obviously have to react. They'll have to come out a wee bit and try and play. But what usually happened is the fans will go up, the St Johnstone players will probably lose concentration, they'll get pulled out of position, and Celtic can pick them off.
Yeah.
But it just didn't happen on Saturday. And I was quite, see, to be fair to Rodgers, because usually I was expecting him to come out and again be very, we'll see how it goes. No, it's just one of the days. No, the players have done well over the course of the season. It's about winning the league over the year. But he's come out and actually gave the players a bit of stick and questioned them, which I was quite impressed with, because he's obviously doing that just now. To be fair to Rodgers, he never says anything that is well thought of. He's very, very, very clear on what he's going to say, because he knows that he has to finish this season strongly so he can start next season fast to make sure he goes into the Champions League qualifiers with all guns blazing. And he can't afford to have a case where you're stumbling across the line, and it's getting that feeling. And actually, usually, if this was a normal season, I think Celtic would have got away with it. They probably wouldn't get as much sort of pressure on that game. But see, because it was shaped up for Celtic to win the league tomorrow, it was probably the first time in a couple of years that Celtic would have won the league in front of their own fans. For the last couple of years, it's always been away at different places. With 3/4 of the stadium, the place was jam-packed. You're playing against Bolton of the league. St Johnstone are gone. The sun's shining. St Johnstone are gone. And before the game, everybody's saying St Johnstone are gone. It's all the results on the Saturday went against St Johnstone. So everybody's one above them. So they're like, no, it's all over. And I think that's where the pressures came on them. But it was just a really passive, lethargic game. It was just to tell the boys that were on the ball were the boys that you don't want to be in the ball. They couldn't get McGregor on the ball. Then the boys guys like Engels and Hatate were dropping deeper and deeper to try and get on the ball. And actually, it's what you needed them to do, stay away from the ball and try and get the ball further up the park. A Sloop was coming in too narrow at times. So when he was getting the ball, he was in far too narrow because he couldn't turn out and get the ball to Jota. So by the time the ball goes to Jota, the fullback's tight on him. And Kuhn, on the other side, his confidence is shot. And I know there's been a lot of chat. Obviously, we'll speak about Kuhn probably because he seems to be the hot topic just now, doesn't he? He's the one it's a hot topic. His performance has definitely dropped, but it's also dropped at the same time as Alistair Johnston's performance has dropped as well. So for the past couple of months, if you compare, and I'd love to get the figures on this, because if you think back to Alistair Johnston flying at the start of the season, he'd be making something like 10, 12 runs from a halfway line to the byline. Sort of doing that inside right channel, and that was always giving Kuhn the chance to sort of cut across the park, one, two, and have a shot. Obviously, Johnston's not doing that. I think there's reasons behind Johnston, because he played right up until it was a final. Was it semi-final? He got to the tournament with Canada or something. Then he came right back. So you can see he's starting to sort of waver a wee bit in terms of his physical and mental sort of fitness. But it was just a real passive game. Celtic just looked. They looked as if it's fine. I think somebody will pull us out a hole, and it's always been Maida probably up to this point. Well, since January anyway. But the 30 man had no chances. It was the game wasn't set for him.
He had like it would. I don't think it would be going too far to say he had his worst game of the season. There was a point we counted where I think 4 passes he gave a ball away, and I don't think he's gave away fucking like since January. I don't think he's gave a ball away that much fucking all the time, and 4 in the bounds. And I saw people going on about when you've got a guy on this much form, you shouldn't be taking him off. You had to take him off.
He was poor.
I mean, you had to take him off.
I was going to say, it was one point in the first half. I think McGregor gives it to Maida. He takes a bad touch. He loses the ball in the halfway line. The guy breaks on him. And I think at one point, he's chased back and he's tackled him on, I think it's the right back area, which is great that he's doing that, right? You go, that's brilliant. But then you go, my God, you're playing against St Johnstone. You're a centre forward. You're a centre
forward. See, that's the
right
thing.
back area.
because he's Maeda, he's sound today, right? And I'm not criticising him because his form and his attitude and basically what he does in the game allows us to kind of go, right, it's fine. But I've been cracking up about Ida. Fucking, I'm saying you're a centre forward. Be greedy. Stay up here. I don't need you back here chasing. And as you say, you've lost the ball, you've chased him all the way back there, and you're kind of going, leave it to them. Fucking, I mean, but
just get it done.
It's really interesting what you're saying because I don't disagree. Everything you said there, and in the cold light of day, it's obvious. As you say, we're at the game, and obviously you're at the game, you see things a wee bit better, but the bus was hot on the way back. Everybody was arguing, what about this guy? He's in. We've already said somebody's saying Kuhn's phoning it in. The irony being Brendan Rodgers likes to control the game, right? It happened in his first period. Hatate fell out his team straight away because he was trying too much and losing the ball too much. David Turnbull was getting a shot, and then he kind of realised, well, David Turnbull's not going to give me what Hatate does give me, so I need Hatate back in. But what you're saying is right, because see, at the start of the season, it was Kuhn who was breaking that ball and getting us that win. And I mean, you think how many goals Kuhn scored where it's deflected off of somebody, and you kind of go set a balls because he can shoot. Whereas after Christmas, Kuhn's fell off and Maeda's took up the slack. So it was so frustrating passing. And I'm actually going to come on to a comment that Gary Neville made about modern day football generally. But I don't know. See if the Huns game hadn't happened, and see Hearts recently. If Hearts score early, it's a different game for them. You know what I mean? Hearts came and fucking Bar does the same way. So what happened on Sunday past isn't really a surprise, and that's where the frustration is, because that St Johnstone game can happen. Like you said, it's a shite pitch, you've turned up, maybe the attitude's only right. Do you know what I mean? That can happen. But it does seem every game, the Hibs game, if Hibs were 3 or 4-0 up in the first half, Nenes could have moaned. Even the cup game, you've switched off with that throw-in. What is your thoughts on the midfield in general? Because, right, Arnie Engels is getting it in his neck, and he's always going to get in his neck because of the cost. Hatate's getting in the neck because his inconsistency. McGregor kind of, but everybody's a saviour until they're in. McCowan should be playing. Bernardo should be playing. Just what's your thoughts on? Because I agree with your point about them
drafting. They get better when they don't play.
Exactly. Same. Remember Bobo Baldi was out of the team and he was the best defender in the world. Do you know what
I mean? It was. That's because nobody was. I think everybody was scared to tell him.
Scared to tell you fucking Tony, big man.
But if you look at the three midfielders, I think in the game, if you look at the game on Saturday, see when they're playing against decent teams, the three midfielders are great because they can get about the park, they go on the ball. See when they're playing against teams like St Johnstone, you really need one of them to go and be number 10 and go and play in the hole. And it's no really their games, because if you think Hatate now and Engels, their best periods or their best parts in games is when they're playing balls through. It'd be fair to Hatate, he tries to do it. He tries to go and play in the hole, and that's why when McCowan came on, he was quite effective because he sort of played sort of in between the forwards and the midfielders, and it made if St Johnstone midfield go, oh shit, is it me picks him up or is it one of the defenders picks him up, and they get caught in between. Whereas 100%. I think Engels and Hatate, they're too similar when you're playing against teams like St Johnstone. If you go back to when it was Ange, right? See when Ange, and it was his first couple of years, he practically had two number 10s. So he had two people stoning in there. He had McGregor and he had these two fullbacks tucked in. So all you had to do was try to find the number 10s. Whereas I think what's under Rodgers, what he tries to do, he tries to balance it off where it's, if it's on the right, it'll be Hatate who'll come across and sort of play the number 10. If it's on the left, then it's Engels who'll sort of tuck across and be your number 10. But it just wasn't working, and it's no natural to the two of them, because the two of them prefer to be sort of behind the play with the bottom feet and playing people in. And it's worked up to this point because you've got Maeda in front of you and he's making runs in behind all the time. So all you're doing, if you think about what was the game? Was it the Hearts game? Where it's wee McGregor plays the ball through for Maeda. It's a great pass. He sort of plays inside, it goes through. That's the passes that the three of them are trying to play. So they're too similar at times. So they're trying to do the same things. So for me, it'll be interesting to see if Rodgers, over summer and even tomorrow, if he looks to try and buy a number 10, try and get somebody in who wants to play with her back to goal, who wants to receive the ball side on, who doesn't want to drop deep and go on the ball and play behind the play. He wants to sort of just hover about in that area and play off a striker.
But when you when you play that though, and you've got, I suppose in theory it works with Maeda there because Maeda's always moving. But when you've got Adam Ida in the team, Adam Ida's actually taking up the space that you're talking about, isn't he? Because he's dropping that deep in. No, I mean, but it's interesting, right? Because it looks like Greg Taylor's time's done it, Celtic, but we have literally, since we signed Sloop and we decided, we've changed the style of play. It's not hugely different, but we have changed in terms of. I was thinking about the Rangers game. I was wondering if Greg Taylor would have helped that game because we lost the midfield. Everybody knows it, right? And we never had McGregor and stuff. I wonder if Taylor coming in, but I think you spoke about. You was talking about the overlap by Johnson was allowing Kuhn that space and that under. But if you go back to Brendan Rodgers' first time, we had Kieran Tierney bombing there, Sinclair coming in, and who would we had on the other side, and Lustig was off times tucking in, but he was tucking into defence rather than midfield. Do you know what I mean? So it was a, but we still had that. So I don't know. I don't know because I think Sloop's been a good player overall. It was honky tonk against St Johnstone, but I think that kind of changing the fit by the new, and when it's no working, it's easy for it all to kind of lose. Do you know what I mean? And then become reliant on Kuhn and Maeda. What?
Aye. I think what he's got with Sloop, I'm not sure when he was at Crystal Palace or at Leicester that he played as a fullback, sort of tucking in the park.
Mm-hmm.
I think at the time he played more as a natural sort of left back or left winger.
That's my point, aye.
So when he came to Celtic and they're encouraging him to come in the park, because see if you watch the game back to Sunday, see the amount of times that he receives the ball from the right hand side, but his back is facing Jota, so he can't even see Jota. His body shape's so wrong, so he's facing the wrong way. He's too far in the park. Whereas, see if he takes 5 steps back and he receives the ball to the right, then all he does is just open up his body and it goes out to the left to Jota and he gets it early. So amount of times that Jota was on, but he couldn't get the ball to him. Then when the ball does go to Jota, he sort of just slows it down and passes it back, and then it goes slow again. But going back to Sloop, I think it's not been natural to him, I would say. I think that's, and he's done well, because physically he's done well. He's gave you that sort of balance, so on the left-hand side. He's decent in the air, so it means that you were sort of countering some of the attacks that were going to come against you, which you can see has been targeted for a while, that teams will always target Taylor when it goes to the back post area. It means that the teams had to change it. So that's worked. But I do agree, for games like tomorrow, I would fully expect if Taylor's going to come back in tomorrow, because they're going to go back to the tried and trusted.
It's Marty's joined us. Marty boy, how are you?
How's it going, folks? Hiya, Brian. How's things?
Hi, Marty.
Marty, you been listening? Are you up to
no,
scoop?
I'm very well, mate. I'm very well.
I'm not. I just jumped on there quick as I could.
Right. So I'll come to you in a minute. I'll just kind of. But it was to get back to Sloop. I think Sloop's performance against Bayern Munich away was the performance that we all wanted for Greg Taylor, and we never got for Greg Taylor in Europe. I think Greg Taylor's been a fantastic player for Celtic all the years. Really, but he's had some stinkers. Bodo Glimt, both legs. You could, just as you said, they targeted him and they penetrated against him and they tore him a new hole. And Sloop coming in, knowing that you've got Kieran Tierney coming in, because you think Kieran Tierney isn't going to be tucking in. I mean, there's more likely Kieran Tierney might make it a back three rather than being in a midfield.
Aye.
I know he's playing as a winger now, you know what I mean? But
left wing, I know, I seen that the other night.
It just shows you we're getting an all-rounder, you know what I mean? But no, I don't think it's fair on the team. In the cold light of day, when you think about it, I don't think it's fair on the team to say they've dusted it off, season's done. But things that were coming easy for them aren't coming easy. I'll tell you what was an interesting thing, and it was Paul John Dykes on Axom said earlier on this week. Yesterday, when he was talking to Big John Paul, he brought up how many games Engels has played for us this season.
Right.
And he kind of had a wee look back at Engels. And I'd done a bit of review on Engels when we first signed him. He's 22-year-old, and the most he's played in a season, 30 games. And he's sitting now at 45. And whilst you don't want to allow these guys, professionals and all that, there must be a point where he kind of, maybe his body's kind of went, fucking hell. You know what I mean? You know what I mean?
I think the thing with Engels, I think everybody can see he's a player. He's got technical ability. He's an athlete. He can go box to box. He can mix it. He can see a pass. I think what he's missing is how to affect a game by being in the right place, sort of at the right time. And I sort of compare it back to McGregor. If you look at Callum McGregor this year, he scored what is it 9-10 goals or something?
Aye,
and he's about 8 of them have came from the same area. He gets the ball at the edge of the box from the inside right. He gets to the right. He sort of opens up his body onto his left peg and he shoots. And he scored 8 or 9 goals from that. I think Engels has to figure out how he can do that, and if it's making late runs into the box, if it's getting the ball from the left side and shooting with your right foot, if it's coming in at the back post, he sort of has to figure out how to affect games, because just now he's nice on the ball. He keeps the ball. He gets something down the park. He can't deliver it set pieces, but he's no being effective in a game. He's no giving you big chances. He's no scoring big goals, apart from penalties, right? Which is fantastic. But you can see there's so much more to come from it. But I sort of get your point. What you're saying, he's played so many games. He's played a lot of games for a young boy, and I know we'll say, my God, you're getting paid a fortune. You're getting the best of food in you. You've got sports science behind you. They're telling you when to train. If the boys hardly train now, if you're playing a Saturday, you're off a Sunday. It's second day recovery Monday. A light session Tuesday. You're off Wednesday. So the boys are not putting a lot of training in. But mentally and physically, the players are totally different now compared to sort of 20, 30 years ago.
Yeah.
The players are not built now thinking that they're going to play. Well, I was going to say they're not built now to play 40, 50 games, but then you say Callum McGregor plays like 60 games a season. I think he's went for the last couple of years. But he's one of the very few. The rest of them just they don't seem to be able to sort of stand up through games after game after game after game. And I think tomorrow's really interesting. I think tomorrow's probably the first time in a number of weeks, if no months, that everybody's going to be really interested to see what the team is.
The team is.
Yeah. I think usually you sort of go to the games and you can sort of guess the team. There's 1 or 2 changes, but tomorrow it could be 4 or 5 changes. It'd be really hard to guess what the team is going to be tomorrow.
Yeah. We'll come to tomorrow later on. But Marty, did you watch the game last week? Aye.
I did indeed. Yep.
Right. So we've kind of went through our frustrations and our thoughts on it. Just give me what your thoughts were on the game and what kind of bugged you, because let's be honest, this is all we're talking about. What fucking annoyed you?
You just knew it was going to be one of those fucking games. You know what I mean? It was just like what has pissed me off is what Rodgers has said. We're not starting games well, you know, and that's been going on for weeks and weeks. You know what I mean? And the same with Rangers, the Rangers match at Christmas or whenever the fuck it was, scored early. You know, and it's like, what the fuck? Why does it take you to get the 50 minutes into the game to get into your groove? Like, what's gone wrong? And contrast it to last year, right? So last year, we just hit the Jets at this time of the year and went flying. And Roger spoke
Mhm.
about it at his press conference and said, it has been a long season. There is fatigue in the squad, but that performance just isn't acceptable. And he was annoyed about the opportunity. Well, it was actually a very good point. He said, "Look, with the opportunity to win the league at home, how often does that happen? Like it doesn't happen every year, So we were given the opportunity to give our fans a right good day out in the sun, and we fucking fucked it. Do you know what I mean? So he was talking over a lot of different matters, but there's I really do think that the contrast is there from last year. And Brian, you're far better able to talk about the mentality of players. When they've got a league in the bag, basically, and it would take a monumental balls up, to lose it.
Monumental.
And I'm
Yeah.
sure they're looking at their holidays and they're thinking that they don't want to get injured for a cup final and all those thoughts. They're normal people. Do you know what I mean? All those thoughts must be going through their mind, but not the kind of push on this year. I think there's a very, very stark contrast to last year. And Rogers talked about it last year after the draw at Ibrox about this is the time of the year when winners win. This is our mentality will drive us towards the league this year, but we kind of had it sewn up from November. So again, that level of performance, and I said it on here a couple of months ago. Like this has been one of the best years of my Celtic supporting life. It has been a tremendous effort the whole way through to January and February. Streaking ahead of Rangers, doing really well in Europe for a change. A League Cup in the bag before Christmas, like in any year that would have been amazing. And for us just to start this stuttering and obviously losing the Rangers is just a gutter. But like losing to the bottom team in the league, you're like, for fuck's sake. And players like Schlupp, I just come on there as you were talking about him. It's a bit of a dominant dating for a player who may be looking to
Aye.
get a deal with us next year that he was hooked. You know what I mean? Against the bottom fucking team in the league. You're like, mate, what is going on here? So look, I'm sure you
It's
have expressed all the same thoughts before I come on, but that's where I am, and it's just infuriating a wee bit, but kind of understandable at the same time,
Definitely.
And
I
and
think
I'm not. Sorry, Brad, go ahead.
no. I was just when you're talking about Sloop getting taken off at half time, I think is it no Kuhn's been taken off at half time? I think it's two from the last 3 or 4 games or something. I think he's been hooked twice,
Mhm.
Right, fucking hell.
which
And
which is
like
when you think
we he
like
would have
any
been one
football
of
player
my.
getting hooked at half time, you're just like Jesus.
I know, but like
You get hooked
Coons.
at half time, you're fucking devastated, aren't you? And for it to
Oh,
happen
totally.
3 weeks in the bounce, man.
Yeah,
I never
no,
even thought of
absolutely.
that. That's a fucking. But again, going back to, I said we don't really want to go into it, talk about the Morris yet. You've got to think it's shooting in that he's no starting. And what's he saying to it? Do you know what I mean? You liked him because confidence is a massive thing in it, and he looks like the same guy we bought last Christmas. There was like,
Yeah, I
bro,
did.
I was talking to Stu today, and we were talking about. Do you remember the game where he just scored the penalty? We won 2-1 at Hibs last year. It was a
Aye,
fucking dirgy game. It was dirge, man. And Hibs missed 4 sitters. And I remember the first half. It was the two centre halves just passing each other. It was fucking horrible, man. And I remember Kuhn every time he got to a fullback, back he went. And that's what we're getting again. Do you know what I mean? I was. I'm going to touch on it later on, but Gary Neville this week was talking about how football has been played now by a goalkeeper and two centre halves, and he said, "No harm to them, but they're the worst players on the pitch. Why have they got on the ball?" And he went through the possession over the years, who had the most possession stats. And for years and years and years, it was all midfielders, including Barry Ferguson, top of the English Premiership. It was all midfielders. And then for the past couple of years, Virgil van Dijk, Lewis Dunk, his possession stats. And you've, and
same.
you've got to you've
Brighton.
got to think, see the amount of time that Big Scales is on the ball when he plays for us. Do you know what I mean? And CCV, they've got it, they're thinking it about. And and that really does. That comes down to the manager, doesn't it? How he wants to set up the game.
And in fairness to him,
Aye,
he said that either he said like outright, this is not acceptable to me. and I've told him. You know, so he's not saying he wasn't really making excuses for them because he was actually quite forceful at the start of his interview. He was just going basically, it's not acceptable at all. Do you know it's not? And here might be a few reasons why, but the bottom line is it's up to me to make sure. And he was actually asked that question. They were saying to him, "What do you do with players who are in this position?" And he didn't really give a straight answer. He gave, you know, again, he gave like a range of issues, I suppose, rather than saying, "I go in and I fucking start booting tables and throwing bottles of water and things like that." You know, so
see the thing with the centre halves. See the thing that baffles me, and it's Carter Vickers is bad for it. He goes touch, and he sort of edges forward.
It
But the
pushes you
game's not going
forward.
to change. And the game's not going to change in front of you. It's going to be hard to find anybody because their defenders can see the ball, can see all the runners, and they'll just follow them. So it becomes impossible when you step forward. But that's when, see, if you look at the start of the season, what would have been happening is Carter Vickers would have popped out to Johnston quickly, it'd get popped back, then it went out the other side to left back, and it had been moved far quicker. But we've got into a bad habit now of just sort of stepping forward a wee bit and stepping forward. And the games, the pictures are not going to change. The players can run about. Ismaida can run about as much as he wants, but he's running about, and the defender can see him and he can see the ball. So the defenders are delighted. But when you start moving the ball across the park,
100%.
that's when you lose them. But it's true what you say. The centre halves now are more and more important. They're more and more important in what they do, and you need to make sure that they're able to see that pass early. And if they don't see it early, then they have to move it. They have to move the ball quickly.
No, I really hope we get, and I think you might find an evolution in guys like Virgil van Dijk, obviously the top of the level is, see a centre half who can fucking rattle the ball, right? Because I think about our centre halves, as you say, plodding into their half, still looking, their defence just happy as they're just sitting there, banks, we know what we're doing, nobody, and how frustrating is this? And you're a midfielder, my centre half gives it to you, you get a guy right up your arse, you get it straight back to centre forward, and nobody's moved, nobody's done nothing. But I'm screaming in Sunday the game, I'm going, I wish Big Trusty would just have a ping and goal. Do something different. It might deflect off somebody. It might. Do you know what I mean? It fucking might bring them out because every time he's going on, he's hit. But I suppose if he's getting up and he's fucking hitting the top of the stone every week, then there's fucking no point now.
He was screaming at him. You can hear none of them. No, it's a difficult one to know, but it's just they've played themselves into a wee lull just now. And
it's went back to the bad point of last season. And Marty's talking about last season. We finished off the season brilliant last season, but we started off garbage. And it's kind of flipped this year. But the mad thing is we've still got one trophy's just there to be taken, and the other one, I mean, let's be honest about it, we'll probably, touch wood, we probably go and Geese and Johnson are doing at Hampden next weekend. But if we continue the way we're going now, a cup final against Aberdeen at Hearts isn't shooting in. Definitely not. Playing like we've kind of got to get guys back into it. And the irony we're talking about the midfield is I felt the chopping and changing midfield around Christmas time was the reason that the performances dipped, because we never really had that solid. You know what I mean? And then, but now we're at the point now we're kind of going, well, drop the midfield, drop on them. Do you know what I mean? Put these new guys in. And you're like, I don't really know the fucking answer.
Get the boots back on.
Aye.
I'm going to go tomorrow with my boots just in case they're short. Try and get
waving the people.
Oh, nightmare, man. But see the point.
Take Henrik's boot with you.
I know, just point. See the point that Marty's pulling it. There must be. And again, it's only natural. It's true what Marty's saying. See, because we've won the league, they've not won it. Well, they have won the league, but see, because there's been no pressure for Rangers. Every time Celtic have even looked at dropping points or had a hard game, then Rangers have faltered. If you look at that end, obviously Rangers get beaten the Saturday. So Celtic are going into that game going, right, we're playing both in the league. We've got 3/4 of the stand. Rangers have got beaten the Saturday. This is done. So I mean, this is all we do is turn up and we win, and they've probably got a harsh reality. They've got, hopefully last week is sort of gave me the sort of wake up call, and they're like, right, shit, we're going to have to turn up now. We're going to have to make sure we put a performance in, because I'm pretty sure that they players, guys like Sloop and even Schmeichel, I appreciate if he was the playing, but I'm sure some of the boys will be saying to themselves, Jesus, we've won the league. We've won the League Cup. We're practically won the league. We're in the semi-final of the Scottish Cup with a good run in Europe, and we're getting absolutely battered
We're getting ripped off
because we've lost a game. You know what I mean? And they'll be like, Jesus, because guys like Sloop is probably the Leicester, Crystal Palace. See, this time of year down there, I see if we've got 40 odd points, it's the boys are all. They're like that.
I mean, Sloop is part
they're
of
like their holidays in Barbados, and they're like, oh, where am I going next?
Sloop is part of the team that won the league, but you just know that with the attitudes down there, they could have lived off that. Do you know what I mean? They probably, a lot of them probably still. Do you know what I mean? But it's a different mindset. It's Celtic. I mean, there's somebody I've put up there. Heavy vibes. He's saying, fellow on Axiom yesterday says he heard Calmack and Engels were shouting at Sloop to stop hiding. Things like that. So as we kind of indicated earlier on, we'd like to touch on your opinion and have you ever had an experience? We hear that the splits in Scotland to avoid meaningless games, right? Yeah. So and the interesting thing is we were going for the league last year, and you rightly said St Johnstone, as far as everybody else were doing, but St Johnstone had showed a set of boys, and they come up with a plan. I don't think that boy's been a bad managerial appointment at all. That's
Aye.
So I mean, he's gave him a bit of hope that a Charlie Mulgrew maybe one day gave you fucking poor Charlie. But have you had a point in your career, even when you were playing in the lower leagues with Clyde Bankerson, where the season was done and you were mid-table and there's nothing to play for, or the league was done, so basically you're 3 games to go and there's nothing on that part playing for apart from your win bonus?
Yes, I've probably at juniors I've had a few. There's been a few seasons where you're sort of sitting mid-table and you've no got anything in the league, and a lot of the time, you can try and sort of get yourself up for it and rails, and get yourself going. But see if you come up against a team who are either going for the league or they're going, if they're trying to stay up, within about 5 minutes you're like, shit, I'm fucking miles off it here. Miles off. But see the next week, see if you play against a team who's in a similar sort of mindset to you, then it's a decent wee game, everybody plays, and there's a few tatters, nothing daft, but then you go and
help people up and all that, Keeper.
And you're like, right. And some people can move their game quickly. There's players I've played with, players who mess about in warm-ups, then as soon as the start of the game goes, they're on it, they can play, and they can go and sort of lift their game and their attitude and their mindset, how they speak, just totally changes. But then there's other boys that sort of need to build up to it, sort of need to wind themselves up from the Thursday to make sure when it comes to 3 o'clock on a Saturday, they're like, right, I'm ready. And if you're not doing that, if you're one of the boys that needs to do that and you're not doing it, it's really, really difficult to change it. But it happens quite often. And you'll see loads of games, because some of the results that you end up seeing, it's this time of year, there's random results that always kick about come the end of the season. If you look, even probably the best example is Dumbarton last week beat Celtic 6-0. It was big Charlie Mulgrew. Dumbarton get relegated 2 weeks ago, or 3 weeks ago. They went up, so they're both in the league, relegated, and they went up and played Celtic, who's 6th or 7th in the league, and beat them 6-0 away from home. So, because the Dumbarton boys have got nothing to play for, so they're like, come on, I'll just play. Come on, get the ball, let's play. It's a totally different mindset to what it was about 6 weeks ago. It's when they had to win. When they had to go and get a point and they couldn't get it, then they go up to Celtic and they win 6-0. So the Dumbarton manager must be like, yourself, what the fuck? How can you win 6-0? And you see it all the time. But it is a totally different mindset now. Boys are just, they're built different now. There's a different understand, or it's what they expect of themselves is totally different compared to your days of your Paul McStay's, your Peter Grants, even your Tam Burns, even if you go further on, probably Scott Brown, and the last remaining one probably is Callum McGregor, who's one of these guys that's able to go, no, I'll always play. I'll play 50, 60 games every season. He's probably just one of the last remaining ones. Even if you look about Scottish football, there's no many of them left that will play a high number of games. A lot of them just come in and out.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, even you get back to Roy Keane's book, when Roy Keane says, what would I change about my career? I wouldn't have been playing injured. I wouldn't have been running myself into the deck and all that. I'd have been looking after myself. I thought, on a wee side note, I thought it was a real interesting thing. He spoke on the overlap this week. He was talking about Gary Neville was going off on one about he'd signed this boy in a 3-year contract at Salford, and the boy, he said to the boy, move up to Manchester, and he says, I will, but he never moved up, and he says the boy was travelling up every day, travelling up from London, I think it was, every day to Manchester, and he says for a playoff semi-final, the boy was late, got stuck in traffic, and fucking the manager's like, you get to fuck. But Roy Keane was saying, when he came to Celtic, he would travel up for training on, say, the Monday. Say they played on the Saturday, half on the Sunday, he'd be back down the road, he'd travel back up on the Monday. If they're half on the Wednesday, he'd travel home, he'd travel back up, and he says, I must have got 6 hammy injuries. And he said, because I wasn't looking after my body. Do you know what I mean? And again, another segue was Claudio Reyna just saying, when I went to England, English football trains different from any other league I've been in. English football, it's all about pace, so it's all about recovery. It's not about training. Whereas in Italy, it's all about training. It's all about systems. He says, but in England, and there's just stuff like that. But especially when guys are coming from all around the world, it must be, and you've kind of got to tap into that attitude as well, as you say, that if you don't fucking win and you don't win good, it's as bad as a fucking defeat sometimes. You know what I mean? Aye.
I'd love to hear. Where you go?
No, crack. Finish.
No, you're going. No, I was just going to say, I'd love to hear, see some of the Celtic boys, you know, like they get what I said, like Sloot and Spike on that. They must be like themselves. How the fuck are we getting battered here? No, I mean, the press are on is the fans are getting as it's thinking. If the managers went off, he's not after the game. Even his press conference today, he's talking about changing boys. He's going to have to make sure that there's going to be a turnover, and you're like, fucking hell, just get beat a close one game. Yeah. All of a sudden, the place is on fire.
Chris Sutton in the paper ripping into his dollars, you know what I mean? That is a mad thing when you think about it that way. I mean, even go back to the open goals, and it was like Scott McDonald, Barry Robson says, you're coming for Celtic, where everything was intensified. You've got to win good, and then you go down to Middlesbrough and you get a draw, and you're sitting devastated, the rest of the team are high-fiving each other. You're like, fucking wild. You know what I mean? But anyway, right. A lovely segue. Marty, did you see Brendan Rodgers' press conference? You did. You watched that?
Yeah, a wee bit.
No, crack on.
No, just a wee bit. I watched it.
Oh, you just saw a wee bit, right. So Brian gave us that lovely segue, professional that he is. So Brendan Rodgers' press conference today, he made a comment, right? And I'm going to paraphrase it because I can't really remember exactly what he said. But ultimately, he suggested that sometimes things get stale and players need to move on, or the coach moves on. That's basically how it works, right? As I say, paraphrase it, says it a different way. And for everything I'm watching on social media, that's been taken in so many different ways. One guy suggests Brendan Rodgers for the off. Another guy says he's putting pressure on the board to back him. Another guy said, you know what I'm saying? So I'll come to you, Marty, right? With that comment, how would you take that?
Well, there's no doubt about it that he's pressurising the board because we're sitting on an absolute fucking goldmine of cash and he wants it. Do you know what I mean? There's no doubt about it. I'd be very, very surprised if anybody would disagree. You know, and he's already broken the transfer record this season, so he wants the money out for the players that he wants in. And we're all fighting blame. We don't know what's happening going on behind closed doors, but we fucking know what Celtic are like in a general sense. So you could definitely see where he is saying, you know, so I mentioned Schlupp earlier on. He's probably saying, look, loan deals like this aren't going to do us here. You know, we need to bring in a higher quality of player who wants to be around for the next 3 4 years. You know, so you could definitely see that happening. In a general sense, he's right. You know, that is the case. He will move on more players this year, or he will move on himself. I don't think he will move on after having such a good Champions League campaign. I think he stay. I'm not sure whether or not he stay beyond next year, but I definitely think he'll be here over the summer. And you know, if he's backed and if he's given the money that he needs, then he will do a good job. He has constantly banged on about smaller squads with higher quality. Do you know? And that's what we've always said on here, that we fill our benches and stuff full of just shit players, or you know, just a body where you'd probably be better off just putting a promising youth player up into the first team squad instead of bringing in these range of fucking wage suckers who just, you know, empty your the coffers every year. So I think he's made that fairly clear. I don't think that's nothing. It's not a revelation to anybody, you know, that he's thinking along those lines. I'm not sure if he was, obviously I didn't hear that, but I'm not sure if he was prompted to say that or if he just came out with it at some point when he was doing his usual ramble, you know. But it is an interesting point, and there's no question about it. Like, there's always going to be strains with our board because they're not always going to want to do what you want them to do. And some of them think that they're fucking football experts, which is even worse. Do you know what I mean?
What were you, Brian?
I, I would say that Rogers is a very intelligent man. In any time he says anything, he's very clear in what he's saying and the effects it's going to have. So it's not as if he's not the sort of manager who would say something that's quite flippantly and it becomes a thing. He's not like, he's far too experienced. He's far too knowledgeable for that. I think there is an element that he's putting pressure on the board. I agree with Marty. I think there is an element that there's something happening behind the scenes with maybe a few players that he's sort of laying down a marker for a few of the boys to say, actually, if you don't perform, some of you will be leaving. So I think it's a bit of both for me. But yeah, no, he's a very clever guy. He's not going to say something like that without fully understanding the sort of effects it's going to have. But obviously the obvious one is it's a nod to the board to say, right, I'm going to want more money. No, it's what I'm going to get. And the fear is, and I'm sure he's saying it, and the fear is that if we don't get the money until we've qualified for the Champions League, whereas he'll be saying, no, it's give me the money just now so I can buy the boys in June. So I've got them in July for pre-season and they're ready to go. And that's where it's a wee bit of mind games. But I think there is an element of it. It's probably pointing to some of the players as well as a warning. I think there is an element of that.
Coming on the heels of his comments after the St Johnstone game, where he basically put a big question mark over some of the attitudes and mindsets of the players, if they want to be top players or that part of, do you know what I mean? It's interesting because, see, in January, I was looking at the Celtic squad and I was thinking, if we keep the main parts of this and build on it, this could be a really good squad. And as the season's went on since then, you're now doubting a lot of them. Like, I don't mean as players. I don't mean as players. I mean doubting in terms of sticking about. I mean, I thought CCV looked like a guy who would be. He signed that new deal. That'll be him. And I'm kind of looking at it now, and I'm going, is he a guy who potentially is looking that something? I don't know.
I can't. I'd be amazed if he gets. I think he's been really poor
His
this year.
injury and his height make me doubt it.
I think he's been really poor this year. I think he's cost Celtic in big games. If you look back to Celtic's best sort of defensive performance, it was away and it's Atalanta, and it was Scales and Trusty were the two centre halves. It wasn't Skartovic was playing. He cost us in the Champions League game at home at Parkhead. For me, in the Bayern Munich game, the last goal, for me, it's his call. He should react quicker. It's when the Rangers game. It's when he ducks for the long ball in the last minute for their third goal. He seems to
gone for him, Brian, man.
He seems to make big mistakes. I know he seems he's no recovered. He's no the same player as he was in the first 2 years.
Yeah.
And whatever the injury was, he's no. And it could be that it's a type.
Does that touch on Roger's steel suggestion?
It could be then, and that could be one of the ones he's looking at. But there is a few. I think there will be boys that will leave. I think Celtic's approach will still be to sell. They'll still sell players for big money, and the ones that you look at will probably be Kuhn and Hatate, because I think Hatate's at an age probably just now where you think actually this is a probably window to sell him. But are they going to get the money they're looking for? I don't know. But if they can keep that core together, they're probably only missing about 2 or 3 players, but they need people fit. I think where they've struggled from a team. I think where they've struggled this year is, see, when they've looked to the bench, they've no had Bernardo, they've no had Forrest. Adam Ida's never really been fit this season for a number either injury or he's just not had fitness. So when you seen the squad at the start, you said actually Celtic's got about 15 probably starting 11 players that you go, actually they could play, you could move all of them about and you'd be happy with any of them. But then once you go down a wee bit and you say there's no Forrest, there's no Ida has been struggling, and you've got Bernardo out for 3 or 4 weeks, then the whole Taylor sort of performance dropped off, then all of a sudden you go, actually you're down to 11 players now, because the other boys that you've got at the bench, as Marty said, are probably not at the same level.
Yeah.
And I think that's where the wee gap is created. But again, you're sitting here saying that and you're going, there's a high chance we're still going to walk away with a treble.
No.
So any other year, you're delighted with it.
I completely agree with you, Brian. Right, and the real marker was looking at the benches being emptied at the Bayern or at the, in the Champions League matches. You're watching your opposition bringing on these fucking superstars, and we're having to, you know what I mean, and we're having to rely on players that are good players, but they're just not that level of player, you know.
To kind of back you up there, Marty, what summed up this season was that Jane Forrest got injured, and it was a huge blow to us. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Jane Forrest getting injured. Do you remember we gave him the contract? Everybody was like, "What the fuck is this?" You know what I mean? And you've punted. I mean, you're talking about. You poked my interest there, Marty, when you said about you look at our squad, and our squad has got a whole bunch of guys hanging about, and there's hundreds more coming back. I mean, this Odin Thiago Holm, I thought he'd be son. Laga Bielka, Naroki, the Naroki part is just fucking mind-blowingly strange. You've got Lewis Palmer, forget about that guy, do you know what I mean? So huh?
I'm forgetting about that as well.
They've all got to come back. They've all got to. Stephen Welsh. Jeez.
And none of them who you can really say, I can't wait that he comes back.
But to get back to the point, Marty, about the Champions League, you remember that I was very critical of our performances last year in a group that I thought we could have came, and we finished flat bottom, and I felt we could have qualified out of, never mind the third place.
Yeah.
But the Lazio game summed it up. Lazio game, we've got all the pressure. We've got the goal chopped off for VAR. It's all us. They bring off Pedro off the bench, a guy who's won every trophy you can name under the sun, and he grabs the winner. And then as you talk about the Bayern Munich game, they're bringing off Coleman, they're bringing off fucking, I mean, you're like, Thomas Muller, and we're sitting going, and we're looking at McCowan, and you're kind of going, I really like Luke McCowan, but fuck me, you know what I mean? It's,
but here's another thing too, right? Now, I'm not being disparaging about our own fans, right? But we all tend to be. But I'll put it in a.
It was a quiet but.
I'll put it in a nice way, right? We tend to have a healthy cynicism in general, right? So we tend to fucking think that everything's going to fall apart or that shit's going on in the background that we don't know about, and like the board and
That's
fucking all
skeptical.
this stuff. You know what I mean?
Peter
We're
Law.
quite correct. We're quite skeptical, but you have to think that Rogers is having those conversations about Callum McGregor and about James Forrest. So where he's saying about players preparing to leave, he's talking about them too. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
He's going, these boys are at the fucking end of their career. We
They're
can
at the
use them
bars.
as, like Lambert, when Paul Lambert left, you can use them as a make weight, but basically they cannot maintain this level of football that we need for the next couple of years. Plus, they're on relatively big wages in comparison to some of the other members of the squad, and we're not going to be getting a return on that in the next 5 years. Those sorts of now, you know what I mean. We're always on about the board fucking doing this, not and the other thing. But Rodgers is going to have to be making those arguments because that's what good managers do. Like Alex Ferguson, we all know was very ruthless when it came to those issues.
Mm-hmm.
Celtic tend not to be as ruthless. You know what I mean. We tend to give players by balls, and I always think Paul Lambert's a good example. He spent his entire last year fucking about, doing his badges
Yeah,
and whatever the fuck, which was of no benefit to Celtic whatsoever. And he was lifting at the time a stone cold fortune, out of the clubs for doing for going to classes that he was doing in fucking Germany or somewhere. So that's has to be happening in the background too. Also, players like Carter Vickers, I still believe he's carrying that injury because Rogers was so candid about it when he was out, and he was saying this is a soft tissue injury. Nothing will cure it except for rest. There's no cure. Do you know what I mean? And I'm looking, going, that's not a good fucking sign. Because it could flare up at any time, or it could be made worse by a different injury, that sort of thing. So I'm assuming that Rogers is going to the board and saying centre backs, and they're looking at him going, "You've got Carter Vickers, you've got Scales, you've got Trusty, you've got Naraki. What the fuck do you want?" Do you know what I mean? So there's probably a bit of that going on too, where he's going, it's transition plan for the next 5 years. We've had the bulk of Ange's squad, and he's put in the likes of Engels and different players, but there's a natural wastage coming here in this squad. And as Scott says, the half the fucking squad's out on loan because it simply is not good enough. No
It's
matter what.
mad. It's mad, Marty, when you talk about that Lagerbielka, Naroki, and Trusty have all come in under. Oh, and that big fucking clown shoe for Liverpool. Remember
Oh,
him? What was his
Phillips,
name?
not
Remember him?
Phillips.
Phillips.
Remember him?
Jesus Christ.
Right. So you think we brought all these guys in? I mean, I'd say Trusty cost you six, Naroski 5.5 or 4.5, and I think Lagerbielka was 3. It's a fucking decent outlay for 3 guys that everyone is at one point went, I don't know if he's good enough. Or he's
Yeah.
definitely not good enough. Do you know what I mean? I don't think I saw enough of Lagerbielka. I don't think enough of, I think I've seen enough of Naroki to go, by the way, they're pony or they're brilliant. But you're looking at Trusty, you're kind of going, and there is this desperation for us, CCV, to make everything better. And as you say, right, Brian, when he falls below his standard, it's fucking noticeable, isn't it, man?
Aye.
It's totally
It's strong.
noticeable. I mean, like, I think, talk about all the defenders. I think Welsh is the worst out of them all. I think Welsh is terrible. A really bad defender, man.
I think
Do you know,
was really worried probably Rogers over recent times is see the drop off in performance. Teams are playing the same way against Celtic, so they usually put 2 people up against. That's what Rangers done. That's what Hibs done. If you think about Dundee up there,
That's
Simon Murray done it. They put 2 big, strong, physical boys, and they just ruffle and they just pressure and they barge and Carter Vickers and Trusty are no good at handling that. They're probably better at handling smaller players who want to run in behind because the 2 have got good pace and they can deal with it. But see when they've got somebody up against them who's pinning them back and they're trying to roll them and they've got their elbows up and there's fouls, it's no working for them. But that's the opposite to what sort of Rodgers wants. He doesn't want that big centre half who can't pass. He wants the more mobile centre half who can pass. But teams are new. And if you look at Hibs, Rangers definitely done it when it's a back 5 which means it's very hard to get in behind. They play three midfielders who can run about, and they go to the two boys up front. Let's go and try and get something for us. That's what Hearts done in the first 20 minutes with Shankland and the young boy. That's what Hibs done with, it was a Boyle and the other big guy they had up front.
I'm pretty sure the St Mirren boy gave us a fucking hard shift and all, man. Aye.
But it goes at, but that sort of leads you to sort of put Big Rocky in, because he seems to be able to deal with that. But obviously Rodgers doesn't fancy him, because for whatever reason, he'd done all right in the Rangers game, to be fair to him. It was the best of a bad bunch probably in the first half. And the other game against Hearts, again, for 75% of the game, Celtic went dominated, but then he's been bombed out, and that's been him away. He's going to make more sense. That's nice. Whoever that is. Hey,
PJ McNamara.
That's a nice guy. PJ, I'll send that £20 there to you soon. Don't worry if it's that. But it'll be interesting to see what he's going to do with him in the summer. But I think if you go back to what Rodgers said, I think it's probably aimed at people like that. It's but how do you get him out the door?
Yeah, 100%.
How do you get?
Here's the thing, Brian, and this is a fact. Like when Ange Postecoglou left, we were riding high. We were riding fucking high. But I know, because I was told by someone who knows, that when Rodgers was doing his negotiations with the board to come on board, the board were saying to him, "You've this fucking great squad and all," and he was saying it's not a great squad. He actually didn't believe in the squad that was there at the time, and he outlined the fucking why. So it wasn't as if Rodgers was coming in and going, "Oh, well, I'm just going to carry on here the way things are," because he could see the weaknesses that were already there, and we're 2 years in. And you mentioned Tatati, like I've just lost the fucking plot with the guy. You know what I mean? I'm going. It's like Martin O'Neill was talking recently on TV, and he was saying about joining Nottingham Forest. And he said that an older guy at Nottingham Forest kind of took him under his wing. And he says, he used to take me out for walks because there was fuck all else to do. He says, we used to walk around Nottingham. And he said to him, if you get the reputation as an early riser, you can sleep all fucking day. And every time I've seen Hatate this year, that's what I've been thinking about. I'm thinking, like, you were brilliant when you came in, and you've kept your place. And Rodgers keeps playing you because he expects that type of performance out of you, and we're just not fucking getting it. You know what I mean? And it's so infuriating because you know the ability that he has. You know what I mean? If it's a shit player who's playing above themselves, you go, fuck, fair play to you, mate. But when you know what Hatate can do, and he just regularly doesn't do it, it's fucking maddening. You know?
The thing is, Marty, right, to kind of touch on something Brian said before you trapped, and then something you just said, whilst we're football fans and we just want to see the best players on the park, and none of us ever get fucking weighed in when Celtic sell a guy for 20 million, do you know what I mean? We'd rather be playing for us, you know what I mean? But Celtic have a business model, and Celtic will work to that business model, be it with fucking Brian in charge or Brendan Rodgers in charge. If there's money to be made, they will do it.
But it's madness. But it's madness, Scott, because we're already starting. We already have a huge financial base.
No, I get that, Marty. I get that. But Brendan Rodgers has spoke about the squad is getting. Right, we all watch Scottish football. We watch it every fucking week. We're invested in it so much, monetary wise, passion wise, and every one of us are bored of playing the same teams 3 and 4 times a season. And I can imagine that a load of the players get the exact same, especially when there's more money to be made down the road without the same pressures as Brian spoke about, without fucking everybody on your back constantly, without walking down the town some guy might smash your teeth in, do you know what I mean? There's an easier life to be made for people who don't really have that same. So I kind of get that, right? You're talking about Callum McGregor. We all love Callum McGregor. But the fact of the matter is, Paulo Bernardo is the future of Celtic midfield. And this season has been totally underwhelming for him. And you throw in the fact that you've spent £11 million on Arne Engels, your club record. Ultimately, again, it doesn't fucking matter. But we need to play him. We need to maximise his ability, the time we've got him as well. So Celtic are in a mad place now where midfield-wise, we've got abundance of talent and we need to play Hatate to get the best of him. But he doesn't really deserve to play as much as he does. And Arnie Engels is probably the same. And when McGregor's not there, you miss him. So Celtic squad the new, like I said in January, you were sitting going, look how good this is. And you're 4 months down the line, you're kind of going, this could do with some fucking changing about. I don't really know what point I made there, but it's just frustrating.
It
I was
is,
just laughing that you were smashing somebody's teeth in.
I mean, all right. I mean, some guy fucking soaked me with water at the game, mate. Do you know what I mean?
But we also said that Engels played his best football when McGregor wasn't there. So you know what I mean. If Rodgers is hanging his hat on this huge signing, then surely the season coming, the team will be built around this guy, and then you'll know his onions. Do you know what I mean? By Christmas time, you'll know if it's going to fucking work or not. So, like, it's a really, really pivotal year, do you know. And I suppose the way we are playing is making some decisions easier for Rodgers too, because he's going, well, you're fucking down tools, do you know.
That's what
And
you do.
do you know what I mean? Brian, it's like you were supposed to sail into the end of the season here, and it's ended up now becoming sort of angst ridden. And like Scott says, was your Scott says, like, you wouldn't banker now playing the way we're playing that you would go through
No,
to the cup final and do the business. You know, so it's like it's a bit
Right.
fucking.
I don't want to keep you all night, Brian, doing 1 hour classic 4 hour effort. So we'll kind of start pushing on a wee bit. I'm going
okay.
to push. I'll push the 2 years before we move on to tomorrow's game. Who do you think will be looking to leave in the summer, and who do you think will leave in the summer? Brian, come to you first.
Who do I think will leave? I think Rio Hatate will leave. The reason I think he'll leave is because that's him, 3.5 years in. I think his age, if I'm correct, he's about 28, 29. He's probably looking at a last sort of, he can increase his value. I think Celtic will probably look to cash in on him as well.
He's 27, he's 28 in November.
So I think this will be, if he signs another big deal, then Celtic probably won't get the money that they'll be offered. I think he'll be looking to leave.
What level is he going to? And much you reckon?
I don't top championship, sort of low Premiership, bottom half Premiership. I think you'll probably get somewhere in the region of between 10 and 12. I don't think they'll get more about that. I would expect. I just think, see if it's anything less than that, I don't think Celtic will go to the table. I think they'll keep. I think the one who'll be looking to get away is Kuhn. And the reason I say that, I think because of his good performances, which seem so far away now, his good performances in Europe against the German sides would have put him would have gave him enough sort of value across Europe that teams will probably been sniffing about him.
Yeah.
So I think that's probably carried more weight. And I know we are looking at him just now. He's been hooked at half-time twice in the past, 3 or 4 games. The other teams in Europe probably won't see that as a bad thing. They'll look at the Bayern Munich games. They'll look at the that's the Villa games.
Look,
they'll look
every big sale we've made comes off of performances in Europe. Never come off.
Yeah, of course.
I mean,
so that's my two. I would go. If Rio Hatate will get sold, and Kuhn will look to get away, and they'll sign Lennon Miller. There you are.
Do you think that's a goal? I'd be delighted with that.
Season done.
Marty, any more on that?
Well, again, the squad's going to return to being so bloated in the summertime. That there has to be some sort of either permanent or semi-permanent decisions made quickly. There's no point in, if you know that the likes of Lewis Palmer haven't got a future, what do it in June. Either let him go, sell
Yeah,
him, or give him a years
agree.
long loan deal back in South America somewhere and let him fuck off. Do you know, I could definitely see Kuhn going. You know, again, as Brad says, or he has enough money in the bank, or goodwill in the bank that he's proved himself. But the other thing is too, we've said this a few times on here. You never really know what's going on in the background. Like this time last year, we'd have fucking all sent Kuhn packing. You know what I mean?
True.
But it turned out he actually had a medical reason why something wasn't working right for him. So there could be something again that we're not aware of, and Rogers is trying to, perk him up, and it hasn't worked. And I'm not defending him in any way. He's been very poor, and his decision making at times as well is poor. So that's beyond his ability. You know what I mean? Some of the things he's doing, you're just looking at, going, what the fuck are you doing? Why are you running a 30 mile an hour towards your own keeper? It's like, what are you doing? It's just turn and attack the other team. And it's interesting that Stan Collymore made that point a few nights ago after the Paris Saint Germain match, where they were playing the type of football that I just love. They were running at
They were
defenders
brilliant,
and
by the way.
fucking causing chaos. That's the Celtic way. That was the football we
Uh,
grew up with when we were young. Where you just
They were
go
different
for it.
class.
Absolutely. But it's the same with Kuhn. He's running backwards instead of running at the team. And he has the ability to do it. And that's what's frustrating. Because you're
Frustrating.
going, you're a real
Agreed.
good player. You've got good feet, nice balance. You have a lovely cross and you can score. Why the fuck are you trying to get into your own box? You know what I mean? You're like, fucking turn around. So, and that could be issues with the midfield, where again we're not quite sure what the right formation is at the minute. There are players who do need to be rotated out of the team. Other players need to be brought to the fore. And as I say, that has to happen whether you think they're bad, good, indifferent, ugly. You have to try and see if it's going to work. And they've paid out the money for Engels. So Engels has to play. And
Mhm.
he's young, he's really good. To me, he's got plenty of ability. And he's probably looking, it's probably affecting his own confidence too, where he's thinking, fuck, I thought I was coming in here to be the man. It turns out I'm not. So those really, really
Do
tough
you think so
decisions.
with Engels? Me and Brian had a wee
I'd say
touch on
so,
him earlier.
Scott. He's in with this huge price tag, and you know what I mean. He's the biggest ever signing we've
But
ever
but
made.
see the huge price tag, right? The huge price tag. I don't see it being an issue to him, right? We spoke about it in the summer, right? And I felt Celtic needed to grow up, right? In the grand scheme of European football, 11 and £9 million outlays are
It's no.
they aren't even in Norm anymore. They're fucking that's every league who wants to make a dent in Europe is putting out this sort of dough. And see, what I thought was good was we were allowing Adamida to come in without any pressure at 9 million, and the only people but we're now attacking him for the 9 million because he's still a young guy. I was listening to Frank McAvenny of all people, and Frank McAvenny's saying somebody's got to teach him. And Marty, I've been saying this all season. We could do with a guy helping Adamida become what we want him to be. Because see, right now, I don't know if he knows what kind of striker he is, because he's certainly not a lead the line striker. He's no a fucking John Hartson. He's not running in. He actually prefers fucking running onto the ball rather than fucking going looking for it. But we don't
Yeah.
play that kind of way with him.
No,
And
we do not play to his strengths,
we don't.
and
No.
But what is his
and
strengths?
and like he's listening to everybody talking about him. And here's the thing: he scored near 20 goals or something. The fucking like he
Well,
has
but
not had a
I think
hasn't
he's
had
got
a bad
14
year.
goals, right? So I think he's 2 goals away from his best ever, including last season, his best ever record in a season, right?
You
Which
know what
I
I
think
mean?
is,
So
and as I say, we're allowing this young guy to grow in our team, and I think that's great. I think Engels was having that same, but the backlash has gone on top of Engels as well. No,
no, it has, and
but sorry, Mark, 2 seconds. But Brian was saying earlier on, we don't really know what kind of player Engels is either. I keep reading and what right. So Arnie Engels, I'll say this again. Arnie Engels started off for Club Brugge's reserve team as a wide player, right? A right mid rather than a right winger, but he was a right mid, and he actually played in defence sometimes, and he would play. You know yourself, young guys often get played wide because the middle of the park's harder. So he then joined Augsburg out in nowhere for 100 grand and played the remainder of this was in January. He played every game bar one in the middle of a three in the midfield. Three midfield. But the way if you go and look in transfer mark, he wasn't playing as a hod midfielder. He was playing as a bog standard centre midfielder. Do you know what I mean? And then last season, before we bought him, he was right mid, he was left mid, he was in and out of the team because you know yourself, the young guys. So
I get shifted.
I don't think I think you've caught it. I don't think he really knows what he is yet.
No, yeah.
No,
So
I agree totally.
we've got
So,
to shape him as well.
but this is the fucking point, Scott. That's why Brendan Rodgers is paid what he
Yeah,
is paid.
we're paid
He
for,
has to
for
say,
potential.
we brought this guy in. It was like funny enough. I was actually thinking about this recently. It was a wee bit like when Tommy Burns signed Phil O'Donnell, and I remember Tommy Burns saying at the time, "We aren't banned Phil for this season. This is a sign for the future. This guy is going to be around. He has to make his mistakes, but he has unbelievable ability, which he did. So it's a bit like that where Rogers should be saying." My midfield must change over the next 2 3 seasons, and here's the fucking plan. This guy was brought in as an integral part of that plan, and we're going to build around him. McGregor's getting older. Hatate probably wants away, and going back to the upfront argument too about Ida. Like Ida was brought in into that system, and I really think Kyogo leaving really fucking unsettled Ida because he was kind of in a groove when you think about it. He knew his place where Kyogo was the lead striker. These other two fucking guys were playing on the wing. That didn't affect him, so it was only really between him and Kyogo. If Kyogo got injured, he was in, and vice versa. Whereas Kyogo left and Maeda was moved inside, and nobody can argue with that move because it has paid off
Yeah, well,
completely in spades.
Adam Ida got his chance, and it wasn't really working, and then Maida get moved in. It never
Well,
happened straight away.
and
So,
fair and,
but
and fair enough, but right. So, but the difference being is Maeda was playing solid football all season. Whereas, maybe Aiden needed a couple of games to get himself up and running, or a month or 6 weeks.
definitely, aye.
So you can definitely see where his confidence maybe took a knock. You saw it at the Ireland match when he scored. He
Yeah,
wasn't fucking. He gave it to the crowd. Well, I don't actually think he was talking to the crowd. To be honest, I think it was a different audience that he was pointing towards. But that's by the by. It happened.
Scott.
I was going to say it's me, but
No, I think it
I've
was
been
the
his biggest
media.
support. I'm your biggest fan, Stan.
No, I think it was the Free State media. He was getting the two because they basically don't fucking like Scotland. They're going, what, fuck us Celtic.
Right,
They
okay,
would
right.
they would rather take a player from the English second division than worry about a Celtic player. Do you know what I mean? So I think that's who it was aimed at. But anyway, my point being is the disruption at the front end of the squad, I think, has affected his confidence, and the midfield not really doing it, to me, is a fucking huge factor in everything that's going on.
Hmm. Aye.
I, I would say with Ida, I think that the bit about Ida where he struggled for me is twofold. He struggled. He looks like one of the guys who needs a full pre-season. He looks like somebody who needs to be in top of the game, and it was quite obvious he was trying his best to get his move out of Norwich at the start of the season. So he was in and out the team. He wasn't doing sessions. I remember coming at one of the games I went. Was it Rangers game at the start of the season? I think he was like he was practically doing. It was like a training session before it because they were just trying to get some miles into his legs to try and get him ready. I agree
And
with
and
you,
see
Marty. When
and
you,
see with
I
and
agree.
see with all
I
that,
agree
like
with.
he hasn't been a bad player if you
No,
take all that
I agree.
into consideration. Whereas some Celtic fans already just want them fucking out. They're just go get him the fuck. He's useless, and it's another mark against Rodgers that he brought him in and spent that
Yeah,
amount of
yeah.
money. It was a panic signing because had no fucking striker. Kyogo was injured. All of that's gone on. So for that pressure to be on a player, I don't actually think
I
he's
used to
done
well.
too bad. Yeah,
He,
yeah.
he, where he's probably he's never looked fit. He's never looked sharp. See if you look at it's Ida at the end of last season. He was lean. He was sharp. He was taking chances. Like Scottish Cup final, he was sharp onto it. If the game's doing at Kilmarnock, with Celtic win the league again, sharp onto things. He's no looked it's like that this year, and I think for me he's one of these guys who needs a solid base, a solid pre-season under his belt. Then he'll go and kick on. I think when Kyogo left, I think for me, Ida thought that he was going to be the main man. Then Rima Ida comes in and sort of blows that out the water, and that must have dented his confidence because he must have thought, "Aye, right, this is my chance now to be the number 9 at Celtic." But I do sort of get he's sort of in between. Again, he's very similar to Engels. Is he going to be that big number 9 who's going to back into people and he's going to hold the ball up and he's going to bring people into play? Is he going to be the striker who's going to sort of run the channels and he's going to use his pace? Because he's got decent pace.
Decent. Mm-hmm.
And what we're talking about with Ida and Engels, they could do either. I mean, if you work on them, they could be for example, it's big Ida could be that number 9, that big strong number 9 who wins headers and backs in, or he could be that runner in behind. The same with Engels could be that sort of Stan Petrov making fucking runs into the box, scoring, or he could be that sort of Callum McGregor role where he controls the game and he takes he's a fulcrum, he's the one that you play through. But that's why you pay 9 and 11 million, because you're paying for the option and the potential. So the option is they could be either or. And they've got the potential, and I think it's what you're saying, Marty. The two of them are doing well, but they're just. I always think when you look at the Celtic, when you see Celtic now, you just automatically think the guys are all like 29, 30, 31, 32, or they're all the same age. But they're no, some of them are young boys. Some of them are 21, 22. Callum McGregor's 32, 33. Their sort of outlook in life is totally different. You know what I mean? They're how to deal with pressure, how to deal with disappointment, how to deal with when they're doing well. It's totally different, and they've got totally different mindsets. And that's then it goes back to Rodgers about how he gels all that together, and that's where he comes to his man management. So you're going to have peaks and troughs with young boys like that, with Ida and Engels. They're going to go and do really well. But again, for me, it's just
the other thing is too, Brian. I said it on here multiple times when we've been on talking shit here for months. The level of performance that we put in for those 6 months was unbelievable, and the wobble didn't come. The wobble didn't come until kind of everything was kind of sewn up. Do you know what I mean? It's so difficult. Like I said, every single fucking year when you're trying to play Champions League matches, you're not getting to bed to maybe 4 or 5 in the morning after them. It takes you fucking days to recover. We didn't drop really any points at all worth talking about the
after.
whole first 6 months. It was fucking stunning. It was really, really stunning. So it's not really a surprise now that things are kind of chugging a wee bit because the fucking effort that they put in, even the players who I would regard as maybe weaker players or, players maybe you wouldn't want to see next year, like the whole squad was outstanding there for months. Like really, and Rogers, like if you look back at
Guys
Ange's
like Yang
team,
weighing in as well, Marty. Is it exactly?
listen, who I wrote off. I wrote him off. No, I had a fucking had Yang out the door, but my God, he really did pull his weight. It's a pity he's going to be out here for a couple of weeks. It's a fucking shame because we could have definitely been using his energy at this time of the season. But the the whole kind of focus of the squad, how they, and as I say, if you look back on, or as I was about to say, if you look back on Ange's time here, the amount of injuries we had was fucking unreal. It really was. But Rogers took that conscious decision early in the season that he was going to rotate from the start,
Yeah,
and that really, really worked. Do you know what I mean? And that could have been a fucking disaster if you think about it that way. If it had got it wrong, our fans would have went for him. Why are you taking such and such out of the team? But he was explaining it the whole way through. With such a busy schedule, and we were really, really lucky with injuries this year. And it wasn't by accident. He was planning for that, which again shows his maturity as a manager. Where he's not going to flog every horse to death, because he feels that well, we're in a Champions League campaign, so therefore everybody just has to play all the time. You know, it was really, really well done. And as I say, you're fucking 13 points clear, 16 points clear at one stage. It's hard to maintain that level of performance. So
Well,
I wouldn't be, while I'm pissed off about it, I kind of
well,
wouldn't be
that's is
fucking
we'll
suicidal.
look to finish up and kind of talk about the game tomorrow. But I think, Marty, in the cold light of day, once this season's done and what's won is won, and what's lost is lost forever.
Yeah, yeah.
I think I do think there will be a kind of step back for most. I mean, the maniacs will still be maniacs, but most will stay back and go, "Fair fucks, that was some season." You know what I mean, the Europe certainly seemed to be. I always felt Celtic fans were great at suiting their own Bobby, man. And like, oh, what about Real Madrid? Oh, we nearly beat Real Madrid. They battled the free fucking none. I remember being raging that night. And I mean, people tell me what I was like. Fucking last year I was spewing. So this year kind of gave me some. But the fact of the matter is, we probably should have beat Bayern Munich. Maybe you only got the extra time, but we should have beat Bayern Munich.
Aye.
I mean, think of that. So, but anyway, right, tomorrow. Brian touched on it earlier on when he said for the first time in a good wee while, probably this season, there is calls for mass changes in the team due to performance rather than fucking just changing it up for changing it up's sake. We're come up against a struggling Kelly team, but McInnes is a wee balm and he's done it in the past against us. Marty, what would you be looking to make changes, if any, for tomorrow's game?
Well, Roger said there will be changes, if I'm not mistaken. I
Mhm.
think I heard him saying that. So the changes are fucking coming. Whether players
So what
like
do
it or not.
you? I know Rogers wants to, but I'm talking you.
It's difficult. It's difficult to see where he's going to change. You know, is he going to? Well, so obviously you're not changing your keeper because um things injured. You know, Schmeichel's
Right,
still
so
injured.
line up last
So
week,
that's that
right?
one
So
out.
Sinisalo started,
Yeah.
Alistair Johnson,
So
Jeff
so who comes in? So if you take it lane by lane, who comes in for Johnson? Nobody.
Ralston.
So
Ralph.
shoot. Do you think he'd play Ralston?
Ralston
Possibly.
could easily start. Aye.
Okay, so possibly,
Right,
possibly
I'll let
Ralston.
you go first, Marty, then I'll come in with mine. Right, it's Marty. You
No,
go first, then I'll come in with mine.
no problem, Brian. You keep me fucking right. So, so the other wing
We're
then is
45 years down the line, Marty. I don't think it's going to fucking happen.
so the other wing is Schlupp, who he
Yeah,
didn't trust last week to finish the fucking game. So you know
yeah,
Greg Taylor's going to start there. Your
right.
central defence is
Trustee and Carter Vickers.
Justin Carter Vickers because he can't bring in Scales because Scales is injured. So that fucking sorts that one out for you. So you're then
You
in
could
this
bring in
midfield.
Naroki,
What's that?
Narovsky.
Nah, he's
I
not
don't think
really.
he.
He's not really fit to use.
I
Yeah,
don't. I don't. I just don't think he fancies Naroski. So
no, I don't agree.
you know
I
he
agree.
loves Carter Vickers and he bought Trusty, so he's going to play those two. If Liam Scales was around, you would maybe fancy Scales would come in. You know, because he did it in Europe, didn't he? In one of the games where he took Trusty out and
Yeah,
stuck
that's right. Aye.
Scales in.
Hooked him up. Mhm.
So I mean, he trusts Scales okay. You know, it's not
That
like
was against the
Scales is like.
Huns. Huh?
Was it the Huns? Sorry, yes. Was it the
The
cup
Hun
final?
final, wasn't it?
Aye, it was a cup final then. You know, so I knew it was one of the big games. So if he'd have been around, you'd have maybe seen changes at the back line. Don't know if it'll happen tomorrow. Um, what I would like to see is Hatate taken out and Bernardo put in. That's would be my key change, and you can get around the McGregor argument because he's going to start because he's captain. Engels will start if he's fit. So that would be the key change for me. Would be Bernardo, who probably won't be able to finish the game because he hasn't had much football. So you're bringing on McCann for him at some stage, probably
So
during the
Hatate's
game.
no back in the pitch at all.
Who's that?
So you're saying Hatate's out the team fucking
I'd have Hatate out, but I don't think Rogers will. I think Hatate will start, which is
right, and we're not
really
up top.
infuriating. And on top, well, you can't drop Maida. Jota hasn't been great either. Like, you know, he's
Mm.
kind of
It's always
tried.
another guy that goes in the Ida thing with the pre-season.
Totally,
Aye.
absolutely, fucking hell. That you can completely see why, and he's capable of
So
mercurial
much more.
genius. But yeah, but no, but even though he's not fit, Brian, you know what I mean? He's that fucking type of player that can create something out of nothing. Anyway, do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
So you
agreed.
wouldn't rate him. You wouldn't rate him off, even so. Do you know? I can't see Ada starting. Because he would be coming in for Maida, and I just don't
Aye,
think
but
that's.
all right, okay. So,
I
so
just
who,
don't.
who,
I just don't think so.
so
So
who comes in?
your last decision then is on Kuhn, and his replacement would have been Yang. So does he
Like Jim
start
Forrest?
James? Well, that's what I was about to say. So does James Forrest come in there instead? Quite possibly. You could see him maybe doing that. But over to you, Brian.
Over to me, right? I would.
Marky Bonner.
That Packy Boner,
Simpson
Gary
Gavel
Gillespie,
Clark.
Paul Elliott. Right. I agree with you. I don't think I think max will be about 3 changes. I don't think there'll be massive changes.
No.
But for me, I would play Ralston because I think Johnson looks tired, and I think he sort of needs to come out for a game or two, in the hope that it gets picked up, his performance and his energy for going to Ibrox and hopefully the Scottish Cup final. But I don't think he will. I think it will be 2 centre halves, and I think it will be Taylor. I don't think Sloop will play.
Mm.
What I would do in the midfield, I would go with McGregor, Bernardo, and McCowan. And up front, I would go with Forrest, Ida, and Maida. So I would drop Engels, Hatate, Kuhn, and Jota. All four would go.
There you go.
For me,
See that
Jota is
again? You
going.
put up Jota, no?
Aye. For
Well,
me, Jota's
desperate
best
time.
performance. Jota's best performance that he's played is when he's come off the bench. I don't think he's fit enough yet, but
Nah.
he will. He will, as Marty says, he offers you something. He's got a moment of sort of genius. He's got that flair. He won't do that. Rodgers won't do that anymore. He won't. I don't think he'll put Bernardo and Forrest in. They'll only put one of them in because the two of them are just back. I sort of agree with Engels. I think Engels will still persist with, but for me, he sort of needs to be taken out as well. But it'll be really interesting tomorrow because Rodgers it's very unlike him to sort of come out and give the players a bit of stick after the game, and he's followed it up the day as well with his statement talking about, well, if it's not the players that go, it's going to be me. It's going to go. So a lot of people, the media will have a field day tomorrow, whatever he does. So that's why I don't think he'll make a lot of changes. But Sloop is the obvious one, and Kuhn's probably the other one. Because if you've been hooked at half time,
Yeah.
it doesn't matter what level of football you play. If you get hooked at half time, the following week you're fully expecting. But I would like to see a total refresh because this has been a weird week because this is not a normal week for Celtic really, because it's very rare that Rodgers comes out and says stuff like this. It's no like him. He's usually very protective of the players. He'll talk about the season. And again, we've spoken about it. You have to sort of take a step back and go, 13 points clear, won the League Cup. You're playing bottom of the league in the Scottish Cup. Granted, if they beat you last week, you've got Hearts or possibly Aberdeen if you get to the final. Hearts are honking this year. Aberdeen, fair enough, it could be a hard game, but you're still looking at it going, what a chance Celtic have got
Yeah.
to get the treble this year. An unbelievable, and all the stuff about Europe has been unbelievable as well. As Marty's saying, they've got a pile of cash, so unbelievable as well. They've done Barrowfield up. The stadium's looking well. The fans, you can't get a season book. Fucking hospitality's sold out. Everything's sold out. You can't get anything. So as everything's moving in the right direction, so this is why it's quite a unique week, because everything for the start of the season has been very, very positive. As Marty sort of touched on, they've come out the traps. Champions League's been great. He's been able to still win games after Champions League. But for me, I would do this as a sort of draw the line and go, right, boys, I'm taking the 4 of these out. I'm going to put these other ones in. We'll see. But then you say to yourself, imagine you're sitting in 60 minutes. Imagine you're Kilmarnock tomorrow. and it's not neat shit, and you look across to the touchline, and you've got Jota, Kuhn, Engels, and Hatate all coming on, you'd be like, oh, for fuck's sake, you kidding me on, man?
fucking right.
And that's the strength of the bench that you're talking about. When Scott, when you're talking about Bayern Munich bringing on players, I'm sure the Celtic boys must have looked at it at the touchline when Bayern Munich were bringing on Thomas Müller, and they go, "Oh, you're fucking kidding me on, seriously, you having a laugh? He's a chance." But that's not it. But that's what I would like to see a fresh, but I don't think Rodgers will. I sort of agree with Marty. It'll be maybe 2 or 3.
So he done it. He done it once this season, did he? Was it against Wraith Rovers, or was that last year against Falkirk? He made a wad of changes, and obviously we struggled. I don't disagree when you say. I mean, at this point, because we all desperately just want this league done and dusted. We don't want to be going to Ibrox with Eden still on the table. Do you know what I mean? Ibrox is now been elevated to a game it shouldn't be because of the last 2 times we played against them. And the fact that we're all coming back in the door as well. So boys are going to be trooping onto Ibrox after paying 60 by. You know what I mean? They're expecting something for them. Do you know what I mean? But then you've also got to think it is bottom of the league, but it's still a semi-final. We've been beaten else. Are you picking a team with next week in mind? Are you resting a team with next week in mind?
Next week in mind, possibly.
It's mad, isn't it? Do you know what I mean?
It's nuts, considering we haven't won the league, it's nuts.
It is mad, isn't it?
But
no, I think Kuhn. I'd be inclined that Kuhn comes out and Ida starts with James Forrest coming in. Sorry. Jota goes to the other side. Maeda moves to the left, and Forrest stays on the bench. And Ida comes in. I'd like that, but I think it's more likely what you're saying. James Forrest will come in for Kuhn. I see Jota keeping his jersey, and I think Greg Taylor will come in, and that'll be the changes. I can't see anything else. Every change that you guys suggested, I agree with.
No, well, that's an interesting one. That's an interesting one about Ralston. I have to say, the Ralston one, I could see.
See, for me, if I had everybody fit, so if we had everybody fit, I would go with Ralston, Scales, Taylor, McGregor, McCowan, Forrest. I would put all the boys in who understood the pressure that the club was under, because I think a lot of the other boys probably are not getting it. They're like, my God, we're 13 points clear. We've won the League Cup. We're in the semi-finals of the Scottish Cup. It's why are we getting a doing about this? Whereas they boys will understand it. Your Ralstons, McGregors, your Forrests, McCowans, Scales.
See, that's the thing. That is a thing, an understated thing that you're going to miss with Taylor, because it looks certain that he's gone and stuff like that. You'll lose that.
But you're not really, because you're bringing in Tierney, who knows it as well. So Tierney knows it at the same level. He knows what the fans know. If there's a one each straw, that it's no good enough. If the performance is not there at home, it's no good enough. So he'll carry that into the dressing room as well. But I think it's probably, if it was me, that's what I would do if I had everybody fit. But that's not going to happen. And I sort of, it's quite funny about Marty saying Ralston. I think he's still in shock about Ralston. He went silent.
It's actually.
Is he still at Celtic?
I know. That's what Marty's checking now on Google. He's like, are you sure he's still there?
It's actually a cracking shoot. No, it's a cracking shoot. Cracking shoot. Do you know what I mean?
Well, see, to be honest, Tony Ralston's come in for us 4 or 5 times this season, and every time I think he's looked bang on. You know what I mean? And then see the shite he got for that Scotland game, scandalous, man.
I think that was his last game, wasn't it?
Love that.
It would have been, aye. And the game before against Greece, he had a fucking wonder game, man.
But it'll be interesting. So when we wake up tomorrow morning at 10:30, so the teams will be about 11 o'clock tomorrow, won't it? 12:30 kick-off, and we'll see who's...
I'll be half 12. Fuck, I forgot about that. Fuck me. I'm thinking
so teams will... Well, that was that's the problem. That's why everybody's raging, because it was going to be a party day tomorrow, wasn't it?
Those set up, man. Those set up.
It's funny we're
talking about how fucking the Rovsky thing. I mean, you go back to fucking. I know. Ultimately, why he's done it, but you go back to fucking Aston Villa, and he brings on Dane Murray in front of him. I mean, Dane Murray's not been seen since.
That was weird.
Here, and he was brought back off loan as well.
Exactly.
Queen's Park.
Did not be seen since.
Dane Murray played. I'm pretty sure Dane Murray played against Michelin, didn't he? Fucking underage. He looks like a good big player, man.
To be fair, I think he's had two really bad injuries. He's had two right bad injuries when he was younger, the boy.
Right.
He's done well to come back from.
I mean, even the boy Tully, what happened? He was fucking floating about. Now he's away as well, isn't he? And somebody says, what about the wee guy Frame that played against Feyenoord? Fuck's sake. Remember these guys? Mitchell Frame. Right, okay, we'll call it a bye. That was excellent, Brian. Thank you very much. Hopefully you're making another appearance. Marty, we're talking about getting Brian and Jerry on at the same time, would you think?
Here, grand opening, grand closing.
I think as long as Jerry's sober, then it'll be a great night.
No, he's worse when he's fucking
sober.
No, he's better when he's drunk. Fucking get him drunk.
No, God no. I'm not sure if your listeners are really should really be exposed to that. I don't know if you should be exposed to that.
My man.
But anyway, as per everybody for listening, thank you very much. And we'll probably see you next week because fucking I don't know where the rest of the cunts will come back. But once again, boys, thank you very much, and I'll speak to you soon.
All the best.
Cheers, Scotty.
Still help.